Good morning. It's Monday. Woohoo! Thanksgiving week for those of you here in the U.S. I don't know if other people celebrate. I know Canada has a Thanksgiving. I don't know about other countries. What's new? We had an exciting, very exciting weekend with Emma's Bar Trivia Night on Saturday. Yesterday we had the Thanksgiving RPG on to kick off Cameron's subathon. If you missed that, I believe he already has it up on YouTube. I think I saw that on Twitter. It was super fun, so check it out. This morning already my latest HeroClix review went online on figures.com, so if you have any interest in that, you can check it out. It's the House of X set, so we've got a bunch of mutants. It's funny, I get a box of 10 boosters, each with 5 figures, so I get 50 figures, and out of all of mine, I think literally only 6 figures did not have the X-Men keyword, and only like 2 of them were definitively bad guys, which is kind of funny. So we've got a couple Wolverines, slight difference in the paint job, which is neat. So they did actually make them different. We can talk about these more tomorrow if anybody cares. Finally, Forge is back in HeroClix with 2 different versions, same sculpt, different costumes. We got all the Starjammers, which are neat. Got 2 different versions of Psylocke. So one is Quanon and the other is Betsy Braddock, which is fun. And again, they just use the same sculpt but repainted, and they have different dials. We get old favorites like Cyclops and Marvel Girl. I like Cyclops. I know a lot of people don't, but I do. not QAnon, Quanon. It's dumb history. It's dumb X-Men history, but yeah, because Betsy Braddock was a white lady from the UK, and then her mind was dropped into the body of a Japanese assassin by the name of Quanon, something like that. It's comic book stuff. Welcome everyone. We've got Krakoa people, Cypher, and formerly Gold Balls, now Egg. He pops out eggs. It's his thing. And then the rarest figures I got, I pulled the super rare Gambit, which looks nice. Yeah, I know, I'm just showing him off real quick because the news went up today. Give me a break. Gambit, not a character I particularly care for, especially when it's Hector doing the impression. Ugh, I still get chills. And then my other super rare was Kid Cable from the future. Comes back in time, does a bunch of silly stuff. And then the Chase, I pulled a Chase, and he looks awesome, and is a really cool figure, but it's kind of annoying. This is the artist formerly known as Apocalypse. If you've been keeping up with X-Men comics. Yeah, so he's no longer called Apocalypse. He took a new name, and it's in the Krakoan language. So his name just looks like that. And it's like, how do I write that? How do I say that? So yeah, like I said, the artist formerly known as, something. Because the mutants now have their own land, their own language, their own all sorts of stuff. I read House of X, Powers of X, the initial relaunch of the X-Men part of the Marvel Universe, and that was really good. Hickman did a really good job setting out sort of like the new status quo for mutants and things. There were parts of it that I didn't super love. I don't think. I mean, I think if I talk about it, it's not really spoilers anymore. It came out mid last year, but There's a whole... Basically, on Krakoa, they can resurrect dead mutants. Any dead mutants who ever died, sort of, and it's like it kind of robs a lot of the story import of characters dying. But what are you gonna do? Right? Yeah, not every single one, but a lot of them. Okay. Enough toy talk. We can revisit that another time if anybody cares. After long years, the Trojan War is finally... Oh, almost. All right. So we are reading Ovid's Metamorphoses. This is Roman mythology. Telling tales of a lot of like the Greek stories, but translated into the Roman ideals of things. And we are now in book 13. We are very close to being done. We will not finish today, but we are getting there. And yes, we are in the Trojan War. We're in the final year. Approximately. Apollo has helped Paris kill Achilles, but it's not over yet. And the last we heard, Achilles is dead, but his arms, his armor, and his weapons are left to be claimed. And we heard that to claim so great a prize, only 2 captains had the nerve and daring. These were Ulysses, Roman version of Odysseus, and the other Ajax, son of Telamon. But Agamemnon would not choose between them. So, to avoid the burden and the hatred of any such decision, he called the captains of all the host to council to sit in judgment. And now, Book 13. The argument between Ajax and Ulysses for the armor of Achilles. The leaders sat together, and the people stood in a ring about them. Ajax rose, lord of the sevenfold shield, seething with anger, glowering at the fleet of the Stygian waters. And suddenly he made a gesture toward them, crying, "So this is where I do my pleading, here before these ships, and my rival is Ulysses? Where was he, though, when Hector's torches threatened those very ships, running away? But I stood fast and drove the fire away. It is safer to fight with lies than hands, no doubt of that. I am no good at speaking, any more than he is good at doing. He can beat me in talking, but as far as I can beat him in the fierce battle line. As for my deeds, O Greeks, I do not think I need to name them. You have seen them. Let Ulysses tell of his, the feats that no man witnessed. Only darkness." If you remember back in the Iliad, we didn't actually read that section, but there's a whole chapter. Usually it's referred to as the night raid. And yeah, Odysseus and Diomedes lead a team of the Greeks to go and basically break into Troy in the middle of the night and kill a bunch of people while they're sleeping. "The prize is great, I know, but somehow lessened because Ulysses claims it. There is no honor for Ajax, great as the prize may be, to have Ulysses as his rival. Why, already he has won reward enough. When he is beaten, he can brag that, once in his life, he strove with Ajax. And even if my valor were in doubt, my birth is better than his. I am the son of Telamon, who took the walls of Troy with Hercules, with Jason sailed to Colchis. And Aeacus was his father, the lawgiver to the silent shades where Sisyphus strains to roll the weight of his rock, and Aeacus' son acknowledged so of Jove. So Ajax is third in line from Jove. No matter, Greeks, unless it proves me cousin to Achilles, therefore his rightful heir. The cheater's blood is in him, and by tricks and guile he proves it. That Sisyphus, not Laertes, was his father." There's a scurrilous aspect to Odysseus lore that possibly he was from the line of Sisyphus and not Laertes. It's a thing. "The line of Aeacus is proud, too proud to have those bastard names come near to disgrace it. Or should I get no arms, because I took arms before he did, and it took no tattler to make me join the wars? Is the better man the one who came in last, pretending madness to dodge his service, till a smarter fellow, no self-promoter either, Palamedes, exposed his coward tricks, and dragged him out to the arms he never wanted? Shall he get the best because he wanted none? Shall I, the first to fight, be robbed of what my cousin left me by right? Bam. So Ajax is reminding everybody that he's strong, he's mighty, he's always up for fighting, he's a good fighter, he's related to Achilles, all this other stuff. Whereas Ulysses over there, we don't even know who his real dad is. He goes and kills people in the middle of the night. He had to be tricked in order to come to fight for the Greeks at the Trojan War. When it was time for everybody to come to fight, they went to go get Ulysses, and he was pretending that he had gone crazy. And then, I don't know if you remember this scene, but he was out in the fields, and then they come up, and he's like, "Oh, no, I'm not plowing, I'm crazy, I don't know what's going on." And then they put his baby in front of the plow as the horses, or put in front of the horse, rather. And then, of course, he revealed he is not crazy, and he saves his son. And he said, "Okay, you got to come with us to fight now." Yeah. As for his so-called madness, a pity it was not real, and a worse pity that we did not believe it. Philoctetes would not have been a castaway in Lemnos. Shame on us all. He hides there still, his groaning moving the very rocks of the forest caverns, calling down curses on Laertes' son, richly deserved, and due, I think, for payment, if there are any gods. And there he rots. Our comrade, sworn to fight with us, is broken by hunger and disease, inheritor of Hercules' arrows, using them to shoot at birds for his food and clothing, and fate meant them to bring down Troy. But still he lives, not having followed Ulysses. Palamedes had no such luck. If he had any choice, he would have said, "Leave me behind." He would be living now, or would have died at least without dishonor. But that skulking bastard, knowing too well who gave the game away when he was playing mad, had his revenge, and charged that Palamedes was a traitor, and proved it by the gold that he had planted. Those are his weapons, death and exile. Those he uses on the Greeks, O fearful warrior. Suppose him even more eloquent than Nestor. I know one thing he never could prove to me, that his desertion of Nestor was not a crime. He did desert him when the poor old man, slow from a wound of his horse, begged him for aid. This is no lie of mine, and Diomedes knows it, for he was there, and over called him by name, and gave him a sound cursing for being such a coward. But the gods are fair in judging mortals. Now he needs help, though he never brought it, as he left another, so he found himself abandoned, and rightly so. He had set a fine example when he was bawling for his friends. I came, I saw him trembling, pale with fear. I hid him, cringing from death, below my shield. I saved it, that worthless life. Someone should kick me for it. Do you want to fight, Ulysses? Go back there, let us go back, the two of us, and with us the enemy again. Bring back your wound, your usual fear, hide under my shield, and there put up an argument. Well, so I saved him, too weak to stand because of his wounds, yet somehow able enough to run. And here came Hector rushing to battle, and the gods came with him. Not you alone, but even brave men, Ulysses, were frightened then, and as he fought, exulting in blood and victory, I knocked him over with a great rock, and when he made his challenge, I was the one, the only one, who faced it. That was your prayer, O Greeks, and the gods heard it. Ask how the battle ended. This is certain, he did not beat me. So again, referencing the time when the Greeks were being beaten back toward the ships, and everybody was afraid, and almost everybody was wounded, and Ajax stood firm, held his shield, and everybody else hid behind it. He fought against Hector a couple times. He threw a rock at him once. It was a big deal. And then there was the duel, and Ajax volunteered to fight, and they fought to a standstill, and basically a truce to end that duel. So yes, Ajax did fight Hector one-on-one and did not lose. And the Trojans come with sword and fire and Jove against the Greeks. Where is he now, the eloquent Ulysses? But I stood there before the 1,000 ships, their bulwark and the hope of your return. Give me the arms for all those ships. The truth is that the arms claim greater glory than I do. They share my glory. The arms are calling for Ajax, not Ajax for the arms. With deeds like mine, let him compare his Rhesus and his Dolon, his captive Helenus, Minerva's image stolen, and nothing done by daylight. Nothing with Diomedes absent. If you really bestow those arms on such cheap terms, divide them and give the bigger share to Diomedes. Diomedes was another one of the greatest warriors among the Greeks. Arguably second after Achilles, but he gets a lot of divine help in the Iliad. And oftentimes when Odysseus or Ulysses here does a big accomplishment, it's alongside Diomedes. Why give them to this Ithacan who always does things by stealth, always unarmed, relying on tricks to fool the foe? The helmet's shine, the luster of that bright gold would give way his hiding places, and that helmet's weight would be too heavy for him, and the spear too much for him to lift, let alone carry. And that left hand is better at picking pockets than holding Achilles' shield, that great round world. You are weak enough already, trickster, coward. Why take on further handicap? A prize, if, God forbid, the Greeks should give it to you, that would invite the enemy not to fear you, but spoil you rather. With that burden on you, your only talent would be gone, the speed you run away with. And one thing more, your shield, so rarely used in battle, has no mark, no dent upon it. Mine has 1,000 places where spears and darts have struck. I need a new one. Why talk? What good are words? Let us be seen in action. Let Achilles' arms be thrown into the middle of the enemy, and give the order to bring them back, and see who brings them back, and give the honor to him. Woo, it is. But fun. So that's Ajax's big speech, right? He talks about his own heroism, his own successes in battle. Talks a lot about how Ulysses is not an honorable warrior. Yes, Ulysses has gotten things done, but primarily through tricking people, lying, getting help from others. It's a thing. So Ajax ended, and a muttering ran through all the crowd until Ulysses rose. He kept his eyes downcast, a short time only, then raised them to the faces of the leaders and broke the silence, as they knew he would, with eloquence of speech and grace of gesture. So now look at how differently these two are described and and how they talk. O Greeks, if what we prayed for, you and I together, had been granted, we should have no question of the heir in this great contest. Achilles still would have his arms, and we would have Achilles. But since he has been taken, and here he made a gesture toward his eyes as if to brush off tears, by fate's injustice, who has more title to the hero's arms than he who brought the hero to the Greeks? Why should there be profit and gain for Ajax in seeming stupid as he is? And why should I be hurt because I used my wits always for your advantage? If I speak with any eloquence and plead my cause as I have pleaded yours, envy me not my talent. A man must use what power he has. Now, as to race and ancestry and deeds that men have done before, those I call no merit of our own. Since Ajax claims descent from Jove, however, I can call him as close as sire. Laertes is my father, Arceisius his, and he was a son of Jove, and neither of these was banished or in exile, as Telamon was, and Peleus. Through my mother I trace my line to Mercury. On both sides I have divine descent. It does not matter. That is no reason why I seek the armor. Count worth alone. Is it through Ajax's merit that Telamon and Peleus were brothers? The honor of manhood is the essence of it, not blood relationship. Still, if we seek the next of kin, Achilles' son is Pyrrhus, his father Peleus. Let the arms be taken to Skyros then, or Phthia. Even Teucer is every bit as much Achilles' cousin as Ajax is. Is Teucer seeking the arms? Would he get them if he did? We go by deeds and nothing else. I have more to my credit than I can tell you easily, but let me take them in order. So Ulysses starts off by just sort of checking off things that Ajax talked about and attempting at least to debunk them one by one. And even here in Ovid, he talks about how Ulysses is clearly being very dramatic, playing to the audience, pretending to wipe away his tears. Oh, Achilles. But yeah, just pretending. So we'll see how he describes his own deeds. Achilles' mother Thetis knew of his doom and had disguised her son in a girl's dress and fooled them all, even Ajax. I was the one who hid in the women's trinkets arms that would rouse a warrior. As he stood there still in his dresses and reached out his hand toward shield and spear, I told him, "Son of Thetis, Troy, doomed, is waiting for you. Why delay her? It was my hand that sent a brave man forward to his brave deeds. Therefore, his works are mine. I brought down Telephus with the spear. I raised him vanquished, imploring aid. The fall of Thebes stands to my credit. Credit me with Lesbos, Tenedos." Thank you for the follow, Big Reg 74035. The fall of Thebes stands to my credit. Credit me with Lesbos, Tenedos, Chrysae, Kylla, Skyros also. My hand, through him, battered Lyrnessus' walls, and, to omit some others, it was I who gave the man to slay the warlike Hector the glorious. I it was who slew him. Those arms that proved Achilles' revelation, I gave him live in. Now that he is dead, give me the ones he bore. So interestingly, immediately after Ulysses says that you can't, so he says that you can't honor Ajax for the deeds of his forefathers. Ulysses is now taking credit for every single thing that Achilles ever did, because Ulysses was the one who tricked him into coming to Troy. Kinda bullshit, but it's an argument, I suppose. When one man's sorrow held all the Greeks, and the 1,000 ships at Aulis waited for winds that never came, or blew against the voyage, and the oracles bade Agamemnon sacrifice his daughter to merciless Diana, and he would not, being a father and a king, and angry even at the gods, who was it soothed him? I swayed that father's tender heart. I brought him to think about us all. It was not easy, that I confess, to plead a case like this. Forgive me, Agamemnon, with a judge whose prejudice was great. But the common welfare, his brother's outrage, and his own position led him to make the sacrifice. Then I was sent to the girl's mother, obdurate against all argument, but not too hard to fool with guile. I ask you, what if Ajax had gone to see her? The winds would still be blowing. So now Ulysses is taking credit for helping persuade Agamemnon to sacrifice his own daughter for the Greeks to get to Troy. Now again, this was something that had to happen. The gods demanded it, but it's a little cringy, especially with Agamemnon sitting right there, and Ulysses does acknowledge that. But yeah, I don't know that that's something he really should be taking credit for. And I was an ambassador to Troy, still rich in heroes. I was not afraid, and I spoke out, as all of Greece had ordered, denouncing Paris and demanding Helen and all that booty. I won over Priam, convinced Antenor, but Paris and his brothers and partners in his ravaging almost tore me to pieces, and you know it, Menelaus. That danger was the first we shared together. It would be wearisome to tell you all my deeds through that long war, my services with hand and brain. After the early battles, the Trojans hid within their city walls, never gave battle in the open, ever. In the 10th year we fought, but for 9 years what were you doing, Ajax? You knew nothing except the way to fight. So, what good were you? But ask me what I did, and I can tell you. Setting up ambuscades, constructing moats, encouraging the allies, counseling patience, building morale, securing food and arms, sent where the need was greatest. He's like, I did a bunch of other stuff. Agamemnon, deluded by a dream, thought Jove had told him to quit the war. He had the orders ready, saying their source was more than ample warrant. Does Ajax intervene? Does he demand that Troy be beaten down? Does he even fight? The one thing he can do? Why does he not stop those who head for home, take arms himself, rally them somehow? Surely this was nothing for one who never talks except in bragging. What did he do? He ran himself. I saw him. I was ashamed at what I saw. His back, his rush to spread disgraceful sails. I cried, "What are you doing? Are you crazy, comrades? Here's Troy already captured. With what booty do you go home? 10 years of this and nothing to show for it but disgrace?" And so I stopped them. And Agamemnon marshaled them, still fearful, and even then Telamon's son said nothing. He never opened his mouth. He did not dare to. Thersites had more nerve. That scurvy fellow railed at the leaders, till I beat him for it. Aroused, I roused them all, and by my words woke, once again, their courage. From then on, whatever Ajax did, I lay some claim to, having dragged him back from flight. So one of the other interesting things here is that as much as we've only gotten to the Trojan War in the previous chapter, and Ovid doesn't give us a whole lot of the story of the Trojan War, but in this scene we're getting a lot of references to all of these events that happened. And again, for the Romans hearing or reading this, they're like, "Oh, I remember that scene. I know that scene. I remember that scene." So again, Ovid's not going to spend a ton of time rehashing the entire Iliad, but he's going to stick all of these scene references in this part. And yes, if you remember, at one point, to rally the Greeks, Agamemnon has this incredibly bright idea to pretend as though the gods have told him that they should go home, and says, "All right, everybody, pack it up, we're going home," thinking that they're going to say no in their martial pride. "No, we're here to do a job. We're going to defeat Troy." And instead, they all cheer and run for the ships, and it was only Ulysses who was able to drag them back and say, "No, no, 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 no. Never mind. Forget that part. We're staying, and we're going to fight." Yeah, Pete. I mean, the Romans definitely knew a lot of the stories of the Trojan War. Yeah, and we'll get to why the Trojan War is particularly important for the Romans. "Which of the Greeks has ever praised you, Ajax, or sought you out as comrade? Diomedes shares his deeds with me, approves me, and is confident when I am with him. It is something, surely, for one out of so many thousand Greeks to be the choice of Diomedes. No lot ordered me on that errand when we went, scorning the risks of enemies in darkness, to catch the Trojan Dolon, who, like us, despised the risks of enemies in darkness. He was caught and killed, but first I made him tell us all that he knew, what tricky Troy was planning. I might have turned back then. I had no further excuse for spying. I would have earned my praise. But not content with this, I sought the tents of Rhesus. In his very camp I slew him and his companions with him. So, a victor, I brought the captured chariot home rejoicing. Those horses were the price of one night's service, or so the enemy thought. Would you deny me those arms, or think that Ajax had deserved them? Why should I mention how my sword cut down Sarpedon's ranks, how I laid low Alastor, Chromius, Coranos, Alcander, Halius, Prytanis, Noemon. Why call that long roll? And I have wounds, my comrades, where I should have them. Do not take my word. See for yourself! He threw his garment open. Here is the breast which more than once has suffered wounds for your cause. But Ajax never shed one drop of blood in all these years. His body has not one wound upon it. So again, you have this very interesting dichotomy in their arguments. Ajax saying, I fight all the time. Look at my shield. It's completely worn and battered and bent. I need a new one anyway. I deserve this armor. Odysseus, on the other hand, or Ulysses, and again, it really depends on how you look at this, says, look at Ajax over there. Ajax doesn't have a wound on him, but look at me. Look at all these wounds, all these scars I have from fighting. It's like, well, so which one of those would actually tell the tale of a better warrior? What does it matter, that talk of his, standing up in arms for the Greek fleet against the Trojan might, the power of Jove? Of course he did. I grant it. I would not, out of spite, cut down his glory, nor any man's, and there were others there, many of you among them. Give credit, Ajax, where it is due. Patroclus was the one who, in Achilles' guise, drove off the Trojans, and thereby saved the fleet, which otherwise would have gone up in smoke with its defender. He thinks himself the only one who dared to face the arms of Hector. He forgets the king, the leaders, and myself. He, Ajax, was 9th to volunteer, but the lot gave him first place. And then what happened? O great hero, Hector went off with never a wound upon him. How painful still the memory of that time when our great wall, Achilles, fell. And this is noteworthy here because Great Wall is that's terminology that's often used for Ajax, but here Ulysses is using it for Achilles. What a jerk. But neither sorrow nor tears nor fear delayed me, lifting his body from the ground, and on these shoulders, mine, I bore Achilles' body, armor and all, arms which once more I ask to bear. Heavy they are, but I can bear them, and I have sense enough to know their meaning, their full significance. Do you think that Thetis was so ambitious for her son that she would see this gift of heaven, this heavenly art, worn by this lout, this stupid hulking soldier? Ajax knows nothing of the work of this shield, and what to him are the swings of the Pleiades, the sea, the starry skies, the constellations, the scattered cities, and Orion's sword. He is claiming arms beyond his power to value. Now again, if you remember the Iliad, Thetis, Achilles' mother, goes to Hephaestus to get new equipment for him, and does. And Hephaestus makes this incredible armor and this shield that is decorated with all of these different scenes. And that is what Ulysses is referring to. He's like, look at the craftsmanship. Look at all of the references on here. Ajax isn't even going to know what the hell all this is. Then, all that business that I tried to dodge my service came in late when the wars had started. Does he not realize this reproach applies to great Achilles also? If you call dissembling crime, we both were criminals, dissembler both, and I the earlier. A loving wife kept me, a loving mother kept back Achilles. Our first crime was given to them, the rest to you. I do not fear a charge I share with that great-hearted hero, but even so I have an answer for it. Who found Achilles out? None but Ulysses. Who found Ulysses out? Surely not Ajax. It kind of sounds like a politician we all might have heard of saying, basically getting charged with something and then saying, I didn't do it, but if I did it, it was the right thing to do. And you shouldn't call me out for it. Excuse me. Let us not wonder that he pours against me the venom of his stupid tongue. You also have heard his shamelessness, have suffered from it. The case of Palamedes, I was evil to bear false witness there, but you were surely decent and just to vote his condemnation. This makes no sense, and Palamedes could not defend himself. The case was clear. You more than heard. You saw the evidence. The proof lay in the bribe. And I am not to blame that Philoctetes lingers on in Lemnos. Defend your deed. You all consented to it. True, I advised him to. For a little while, I said, avoid the hardships in the journey. Rest your sore hurt. And so he did, and lives. The advice was honest. It was fortunate also, where honesty would have been enough. But now, so say our seers, we must have Philoctetes that Troy may fall. Well, leave me out of it. Send Ajax back to Lemnos to persuade him, with his great eloquence, out of that torture, that rage of his. Or let the cunning Ajax, by some sly ruse, delude and bring him Troyward. The Simois would flow backward first, and Ida stand without leaves, and Greece send aid to Troy, before the lack-wit Ajax would be helpful, if ever Ulysses failed you. Philoctetes hates me with deadly hatred, hates all Greeks, hates Agamemnon, curses us forever, rages to have me in his power, to drink my blood, cries for revenge and retribution. What of it? I will go and bring him back, and if by fortune's favor I shall take his arrows, I will know that things have happened like this before. I captured Helenus. I learned the secrets of the oracles, the doom of Troy. I was the one who stole Minerva's image from the shrine. Does Ajax compare himself to me? The fates had told us we would not capture Troy without the image. Well, where was Ajax then, the loud-mouthed hero with the big talk? Afraid? It was Ulysses who dared go out beyond the sentinels, risk darkness and the dangerous swords, and enter not only Trojan walls, but the high summit, the citadel, the shrine, to steal the goddess, to bring her back. And if I had not done it, how useless and how silly would have been the sevenfold bull's hide shield that Ajax carries on that left arm of his. The war was won by me that very night, and Troy was conquered because I made it possible. Oof. He takes credit for everything. I mean, I don't even know why the army came if Ulysses could have done everything by himself. And he literally, just about everything that Achilles did, everything that Diomedes did, Ulysses takes credit for. Okay. Your gestures, your mutterings, are intended to remind me that Diomedes was my partner. Surely he was, and has his share of praise. You too, Ajax, were not alone when you stood holding your shield before the fleet. You had 1,000 comrades in arms, and I but one, and he had wit enough to know a thinker always is better than a brave but stupid fighter, and that blind valor never merits prizes. Were this not so, he too would be competing, claiming this armor. So would the other Ajax, Eurypylus, Thoas, and Meriones, even Menelaus. Ready men, my equals on any battlefield, but less in council. Your arm is useful in the wars. Your wits need them to guide them. You are strong and brainless. I think about the future. You can fight. We set the time for fighting. Agamemnon and I, Ulysses. Only in the body are you worth anything, but I have mind, sense, and intelligence. As a ship's captain is better than a rower, as a leader is better than his soldier, so do I outrank you, Ajax. In my makeup, knowledge governs brute force, and therein lies my talent. Ooh, digging. But you, O leaders, give your watchful guardian what he has earned through all these anxious years. Grant me the honor due. My task is ended, the fate's obstruction gone. I have taken Troy by seeing that the tall town could be taken. Now, by our common hopes, by those doomed walls, by the gods whom I have taken from that city, by any further need we have of wisdom, of boldness, of recovery from danger, by anything you feel may still be lacking to bring Troy down, remember me, reward me. Or if you do not give those arms to me, then give them to her. He gestured toward Minerva's image. So they were moved. What eloquence could do was evident. The eloquent man bore off the brave man's arms. Then he, who had stood so often alone against great Hector, stood so often alone against sword and fire and Jove himself, could make no stand against his single anger. Unconquered, he was conquered by his sorrow. He snatched his sword. He cried, "This is my own, most certainly. Or does Ulysses claim it? This I must use against myself. The sword, so often red with Trojan blood, will redden now with its masters, and no man but Ajax will ever conquer Ajax." And he drove deep in the breast, which no man had ever wounded, the deadly steel. No hand was strong enough to draw that weapon out. The blood of Ajax flooded it loose. From the green ground, now crimson, a crimson flower grew, like that which blossomed from Hyacinthus' wounds, and on the petals the markings honor man and boy together. Aias, they read, for Ajax, and I, alas, for both. Whew. So after all of that, Ulysses persuades the Greeks. The leaders vote in his favor. He gets the armor. And as we read, or as you all got to experience in our epic performance of Sophocles' Ajax the play, Ajax does go on to commit suicide. Sometimes there are other story beats in between, like him attempting to kill those leaders and being deceived by Athena into just slaughtering cattle, and then being exposed to the entire Greek army what he did or what he tried to do. But yes, by the rules of honor and of manliness for the time period and for the stories that we're talking about, for Ajax at that point, he has been so dishonored that suicide is the only thing left for him to do. So there you have it. Whew. After the fall, victorious, Ulysses sailed back to Lemnos to bring back the arrows, once Hercules' weapons, and their master with them, sick Philoctetes, and the final blow was given at last to that long war. So again, there was, after all this stuff had happened in the final part of the war, there were some oracles, and there was a list of things that the Greeks needed in order to win at Troy, and one of them was they needed the bow and arrows of Hercules, which were left with Philoctetes, a great warrior, who early on in the voyage to Troy had gotten hurt. He had hurt his foot, and the wound festered, and I mean, I guess it wasn't gangrene because he lived and kept his foot, but it festered and it stank. And so at the time, Ulysses convinced the other Greeks to abandon him on an island because he smelled so bad. But Ulysses, yes, was able to go back and convince Philoctetes to join up once again at the very end of the war. Troy fell, and Priam fell, and the poor wife of Priam, who had lost everything, lost one thing more, her human shape, and with strange barking frightened the alien air, where the long Hellespont narrows into its straits. And Troy was burning with fire still visible, when Jove's altar drank up the meager blood of old King Priam. Cassandra, dragged by the hair, reached up to heaven her unavailing hands, and the Trojan women crowded the burning temples, holding there, while still they could, the ancient images, their country's gods, till the Greek victors grabbed them, a spoil that men might envy. and they flung the boy Astyanax from the very tower where he would often sit and watch his father fighting for him and the ancestral kingdom. And his mother pointed Hector out in battle. So Astyanax here is the son, the baby son of Hector and Andromache. The north wind called, sails flapped and swelled, the masters gave their commands. "Farewell, O Troy, we are taken!" the Trojan women cry, and kiss their land, and leave the smoking ruins. Last of all, most pitiful, came Hecuba, hauled away from where the Greeks had found her, at the tombs of buried sons, trying to give their bones her farewell kisses. Only Hector's ashes she could redeem, and bore that rescued dust in her bosom with her, leaving at his tomb locks of her thin gray hair and the stain of tears. Northward of Troy and opposite lay Thrace, land of the Bistones. There Polymestor held his rich court. Priam had sent a son named Polydoris there, hoping to keep him out of the worst at Troy, a resolution wise in itself, but Priam had been foolish in sending a great store of treasure with him. That put a premium on crime, inciting the avaricious mind of Polymestor, who, when Troy fell, had little enough of scruple, cut Polydoris' throat and flung the body over a cliff into the waves below, thinking, no doubt, there could be no charge of murder if no one found the victim. Yeah. So Troy has fallen. The Greeks are seizing whatever they want. Treasure, stuff, people. Various Trojan royalty are either murdered or dragged off to be slaves, and so on and so forth. So now we get to, and so there were also a series of really despicable things that some of the Greeks did right at the end of Troy. And here we have the Sacrifice of Polyxena. I will write out that name. Or Polyxena, or Polyxena. There are various pronunciations. So again, this is a bunch of the Greeks left Troy, and they're all sort of trying to get home. These are a big group of them who have not gotten very far. Yes, Pete Wiz, and that's what happens when you don't listen to Cassandra. Cassandra, if you remember, was given the gift of prophecy by Apollo, and then she spurned him, and so he turned it into a curse that she has true prophecy, but no one shall listen and believe her. And that sucks. On this shore the fleet was moored until the sea should quiet under more gentle winds, and suddenly, big as he was when living, out of the earth Achilles loomed, a threatening look upon him, as on that day when with his sword he challenged King Agamemnon. So the Greeks are sailing for home, and the ghost of Achilles shows up. "So you are departing," he cried, "you Greeks, forgetting me? Your thanks lie buried with my service under the ground. This shall not be. My tomb shall have the honor my life has earned. Let Polyxena slain appease Achilles' shade." The Greeks obeyed him, that pitiless ghost. Torn from her mother's arms, her mother's only comfort now, or nearly, ill-starred and brave, with more than a woman's courage, the girl, Polyxena, hostage and victim, was led to the tomb for sacrifice. She knew too well what lay before her, what grim rites, what cruel altars. Pyrrhus, standing there with sword in hand and staring eyes. She spoke in all composure. "Since my blood is noble, make use of it. I am ready. Let the sword seek breast or throat." She bared her throat and breast. Better that self-exposure than be slave to any man, Polyxena knew. No rites like these will ever appease the cruel godhead. Only, I wish my mother might not know it, this death of mine. She interferes, she lessens my joy in death. She would not tremble at it so much as her own life. And all of you, if I am asking justice, that I may go in all freedom to the Stygian shades. Keep far away. Let no man lay his hands upon my virgin body. Whoever he is you seek to please by killing me, more welcome my blood will be, if freely given. Daughter of Priam, I, no slave, ask one thing more. If my last words can move you, give my body back to my mother, with no thought of ransom. Let her pay in tears, not gold, for the sad honor of burial. She used to pay in gold when gold was hers to pay with. As she ended, the tears were theirs, not hers. Even the priest wept, and, unwilling, drove the weapon home. And as she fell, she kept her look of courage. And even in her falling, she remembered to keep her body covered, to guard the honor of modesty. Oh, so even as she's dying, she covers herself. Such a good woman, faithful daughter. They lifted up her body. The Trojan women, telling off the number of Priam's children, wept for all the evils the royal house had suffered. They wept for her, wept for the queen, not so long ago queen and queen mother, symbol of rich Asia, now almost nothing, insignificant spoil, a thing Ulysses, victor, would not covet, save for one fact: she had given birth to Hector. Excuse me, getting all choked up. Yet Hector found no owner for his mother. She held the empty shell of that great spirit, gave it the tears that she had shed so often for country, sons, and husband. Tears that fell into her daughter's wound. She kissed her face. She beat the breasts which had known such bruising often. Let her white hair fall in the clotted blood, crying, "O daughter, my last cause of grief, what other grief is left me? O my daughter, in dust I see your wounds, my own, your wounds, to prove no child was ever taken from me except by murder. Since you were a woman, I thought no sword could harm you. You have fallen, a woman, by the sword. That same Achilles, ruin of Troy and Hecuba's bereaver, has slain the sister, he slew the brothers. The shafts of Paris, the arrows of Apollo had brought him down. And then I thought, now surely we need not fear Achilles any longer. I must fear him still. Though he is dead and buried, his ashes rage against us. In his tomb we find him still an enemy. I have borne my children to him. Lofty Troy lies low. Disaster ends the city. It has ended for all but me. My Troy still burns. I was the greatest queen in all the world. A woman strong in my sons and daughters and my husband, and now in exile, poor, torn from the tombs of those I loved, I am dragged off, a prize, slave woman, to Penelope. I will sit there spinning the wool according to her orders, and she will tell her Ithacan ladies, that one is Priam's queen, Hector's illustrious mother. So many lost, and you alone were left to ease your mother's sorrow, and you are gone. An offering in an enemy's tomb. I have borne many victims to our enemies. A woman of iron I stay. And why? What for? Why do you keep me here, O wrinkled age? Why, cruel gods, keep an old woman living to see more deaths? Who would suppose that Priam could be called happy after Troy came down? But he is happy. He does not see his daughter who lies here murdered. He lost life and kingdom without that horror. And you, O royal maiden, will have as dower funeral rites. Be buried in your ancestral tomb? I do not think so. Our house has no such fortune any more. Your funeral gifts will be your mother's tears. Your grave a hollow in a foreign sand. We have lost everything. There still remains some reason, there must be, to keep me living a little while. One son is left, my dearest, my only one, my youngest, Polydoris. He was sent here once for safety, I remember. But why do I delay to wash these wounds, to clean her face of the ugly blood? She tottered down to the sea, and as she went, she tore her thin gray hair crying, "O Trojan women, give me an urn. I need to dip seawater." Oof. This is a long chapter. So Achilles' ghost comes up and says, "If you really want to honor me, don't just leave my grave there by itself. Kill another girl and get the blood on there." So yeah, specifically Polyxena, Hector's sister, another child of Priam and Hecuba, is ritually slaughtered and sacrificed over the tomb of Achilles. Hecuba is very sad, goes on and on and on, talking about how all of her children have been killed by the Greeks except for one, Polydoris, whom they sent away before the war so that one would be safe, and sent a bunch of money with him. But we just heard right before, as this story started, that he too was murdered, and Hecuba's about to find out. Oh, Zardoz, do you have a question? Write it out. I will get to it after I read the next section. The discovery of Polydoris and Hecuba's revenge. Poor Hecuba. And there she saw the body, Polydoris, cast up on the shore with the great gash of his wound. The Trojan women shrieked, but Hecuba never made a sound. Like a hard rock she stood there, looked at the ground, or turned her face to heaven, looked at her son, who lay there dead, and studied his wounds. His wounds, and in that study armored herself, equipped her passion. In that rage she towered, a queen again, whose whole employment spelled out the images of fitting vengeance. As when her suckling cub is stolen from her, a lioness goes raging, tracking down the unseen enemy, so Hecuba, in grief and anger, with her years forgotten, her aim remembered, went to Polymestor, the murderer, and sought an audience with him. She had a store of gold she wished to show him. She had kept it for her son, and now would give him. So she pretended, and the king believed her, lusting for gold as always. And so he came to the secret place, and his smooth speech was crafty as ever. "Hurry, Hecuba, and give me the treasure for your son. I swear by heaven all of it shall be his, what you give now, what you have been given, or what you have given before." She watched him, glowering, and with his perjury her wrath boiled over. She called the captive women to her, grabbed him, dug fingers into his lying eyes, dug out the eyeballs from their sockets, and kept digging in manic fury with bloody fingers, scooping the hollows where the eyes had been. The Thracians, in fury at her deed, came after her with spears and stones, but she, snarling and growling, chased the stones and bit them, opened her mouth for words, but what came out was barking. And that place today is called Kynosema, the bitch's tomb, and there, remembering her ancient wrongs, she howled mournfully over the plains. And her sad lot moved Greeks as well as Trojans, moved the gods, moved even Juno, to the point of saying that Hecuba had earned no such misfortune. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. So yes, Hecuba, her one last action is to play a little trick on Polymestor, who had killed her son, and then teases him or tricks him into going to a secret place, then just jumps upon him and digs out his eyeballs with her bare hands, and then keeps digging. So he dies, and then yes, she's snarling and growling. People are throwing rocks at her, and she turns into a dog and barks. forever. Oh, Zardoz says, no, just pointing out that Achilles is a murderous psychopath and would want more blood spilled after his death. Completely true. 100%. Yeah. Yep. And yes, Zardoz, I like how bad luck is a thing you earn in ancient Greek society. Uh-huh. Well, I mean, you know, just like everything else, luck is a goddess, and can turn on you and can be swayed, and, you know, all of those sorts of things in a polytheistic society like this one. Whew. So the rest of this chapter will go, or the rest of this book will go into the story of some of the other characters who live to the end and then end up scattering to the winds. We can skip over the story of Memnon. It's not particularly important. But we should read the pilgrimage of Aeneas, because Aeneas is going to be really important to the Romans. Very, very important. If you're not familiar with it, that is the name Aeneas. Aeneas was an ally of the Trojans. He wasn't specifically from Troy. He was basically a cousin from a nearby town. But he was related to the royal family at Troy. And when the Greeks were coming, he joined up in arms. He fought during the Trojan War. Aeneas is a character that is in the Iliad. He does a lot of stuff. I mean, he's one of the sort of the second rank of Trojan heroes, obviously after Hector. There's Sarpedon and Glaucus and some other ones, and Aeneas. So Zardoz, like I said, we'll next time, because we'll end it there. But the Romans considered Aeneas to be one of their forefathers, one of the founders of Rome. Aeneas is another character, sort of in a parallel to Odysseus. After the war, he heads off to find basically where his new home is going to be, and he has these crazy travels. He fights monsters, he visits the underworld, all sorts of stuff, and then ends up in Italy and makes a settlement, and then later on that settlement will lead to the founding of Rome. It's long, it's complicated, and we'll talk about it more in the future. But yes, Aeneas goes to Rome. Whew. Now, again, I read, those were all of the actual words written here. Some of the emphasis was mine, especially when it comes to the argument between Ajax and Ulysses. So you are welcome to judge for yourself. I have my strong feelings about who was more honorable among those two. Certainly, I mean, it's no question who was the better warrior. But Ajax was by far the stronger and more heroic warrior than Ulysses. But yeah, you can judge for yourself. And again, when we did the read through of the Odyssey lately, I felt a little bit more generous to Odysseus, but not by much. I don't think he's a great character. Again, yeah, even in taking the tack of, oh, this is an ancient Greek hero. He does have these heroic qualities. The Odyssey is a somewhat of a transitionary text, moving away from Iliadic heroes into heroes who more use their brains and stuff like that. Even taking all of that into account, I still don't think he's a very noble and great character. Erden says, do I consider war only a purely physical contest? No, certainly not. But in this case, really specifically, the arms of Achilles, the arms and armor should have been given to the next greatest warrior to use them in battle. That's what they're for. They're for fighting. And that's one of the things that Ajax says. He's like, you're going to give these to a guy who doesn't really go out and fight? Like, what's the use of that? His main, and as Ajax says, Ulysses' main thing is sneaking around and going out at night and going on these raids. And why would you give this bright, shining, probably very loud, clanking armor to such a character? And it's a good argument. It makes a lot of sense. But yes, I have a very big soft spot for Ajax. I really like his story. I think it's very interesting how he's depicted in the Iliad, how he, alone among all of the best of the Greeks, all of their heroes, Ajax never gets divine assistance. Everything he does is never like direct assistance from the gods. Of course, the gods are around and helping out the army in general and changing events, but I mean, all of the other ones, Diomedes, Odysseus, like they're directly helped by the gods. The gods like guide their, move their arms for them. The gods hold down their enemies while they kill them. Like Ajax doesn't get any of that stuff, and yet he's still widely considered to be the next best of the warriors after Achilles, which is cool. And we know from artwork, we know from other stories that Ajax and Achilles were really good friends. They played tabletop games together. We have that great image of them rolling dice and playing a game in the tent. Yeah, it's just it's a cool story that I really like. So, moving on. Yeah, the Thor Loki dynamic for sure. Let's look ahead to this week. This week is, like I said, it's Thanksgiving week here in the US. And that means that kids are off of school and all sorts of crazy stuff is happening. I'm just going to have my usual streaming schedule. I don't see any reason to deviate from that. It's not like we can wake up. It's not like we can sleep in that much even when the one kid is not in school because they still both wake up early. We are doing, so this afternoon, Jessica and I will be doing our Dune stream on her channel, 5 p.m. Pacific. Some of the other Homebuddies are very eagerly diving into the new World of Warcraft stuff that's happening. I say stuff because I don't know exactly what it is. So they will be doing a multi-stream at some point tonight. I don't know exactly when, but it'll be announced. So yeah, that'll be Andy, Emma, Cameron, possibly more. At least those are the ones I know of. So stay tuned for stuff like that. And tomorrow I'll be back to talk about toys. And we'll talk about Warhammer on Wednesday. Lots of stuff that's announced that's going to be up for pre-order on Saturday. And it's crazy. And already we've heard that stores are being severely allocated with this stuff. So if you want one of those cool new battle forces, go talk to your store, see if there's a way you can like sign up for it in advance, or if you have a friend who works there, because there was one report that said every store is going to get one of each. Oh, that's really painful. Yeah, so that's kind of rough. But we'll talk more about that kind of thing on Wednesday. Thursday, no stream, which is Thanksgiving anyway. Yes, sadly, we're not going to Las Vegas this year. First time in a while. For those of you who haven't heard me talk about it before, my family, my wife and I, traditionally we go to Las Vegas for Thanksgiving. We're being good. We're staying home. Yeah, so no Las Vegas next year. Hopefully. Yeah, and then Friday and so on and so forth. So, let's see if let me check for the raid-ins. We just read about raids. Let's see if we can go on a little raid of our own. Who's on? Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, we didn't quite get through a whole book in Ovid today, but I really wanted to read that part. I'm a fan. Not really seeing anybody who is on and worth raiding right now for you fine folks. I think I will just release you to the wilds. Go free. Be free. Yeah, Zardoz. Yeah, it looks like you guys were doing some interesting stuff over there. That was cool. Yeah, the lockdowns are crazy. And here in LA, we're on a bunch of new restrictions that just started. And there were a bunch of morons out there protesting it. And it's like, God, people... Oh, so annoying. So annoying. Some of the best streams are when you don't quite know what you're doing, but you just go with it, and people have fun. Okay, so have a great day, everybody. Have a great week. Hopefully, I see at least some of you today for the Dune reading with Jessica, and we'll go from there. Yes, Fadir. Well, I mean, you wouldn't be a politician if you weren't a hypocrite on some levels, at least. Sad but true. Okay. And with that, have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.